Hey everyone, thank you for joining me yet again for another video. This is BrowncoatNerd. Today we're going to do something a little different. I know I say that like every third video, but this one it really is a little bit different. In case you didn't catch the title of the video, we are doing Guns of Stranger Things Season 3 specifically, and kind of more specifically the Ruski guns. I'm going to kind of do this video a little bit different. I'm going to do this at an angle of maybe we're going to get viewers that completely unfamiliar with collecting military surplus. Maybe they're completely unfamiliar with even owning a gun, let alone the ability to buy these historical guns. Kind of reaching out to my nerd folks out there. Maybe you're just looking for some good ideas for a Halloween costume that's Stranger Things themed, or some cosplay. Either way, this can go both ways. That's kind of what I'm doing this video for. So to my viewers out there that have been collecting surplus for a while, if I'm kind of dumbing this down, so to say, for you guys, I apologize. But I'm kind of trying to produce a video that's going to be attractive to people that are new in collecting, or perhaps completely unfamiliar with collecting altogether. Maybe this will spark their interest in it. So anyway, so we're going to do Guns of Stranger Things Season 3. Real quick, I will mention... if you're looking for surplus stuff, if you're just wanting a costume, not even necessarily wanting a gun, you can get holsters like this, and throughout the season we saw them in both brown and black. Holsters alone are very cheap. You can get them anywhere from like $8 to $15. Sometimes more expensive, but if you're just looking for something basic for your, a costume or a cosplay costume or something, they're pretty cheap to add to your setup, and you can even get authentic ones. This belt buckle, which I saw the Russian soldiers wearing two different kinds of belts with two different kinds of belt buckles in the season. This was the least common. I know I saw it at least once, maybe 2 or 3 times. But this is actually an authentic Soviet Union belt buckle, and I bought this for it was like $5 to $15. And I mean, you can get them with the belt buckle or, with the belt pretty cheaply. One place I do get a lot of my stuff from is sportsmanguide.com. I don't get paid by them in any way to say this, but they just have a ton of stuff. Their prices are pretty good. Just be warned, if they are selling something and they advertise it as well used, they're not lying. It is well used. But as you kind of start to buy this stuff and collect it, you'll get the hang of it. And a lot of it is extremely cheap too. So, for the most part, you're really not gambling on anything by buying it. And then I have had a few times with sportsmanguide.com where I got something that wasn't really as they described it. And I've dealt with their customer service at least 2 times, and it's never been an issue. It's always been very easy. So I would recommend them for the, someone getting into this that, hasn't really got their feet wet. I would say that is a good, dependable, and trustworthy company there. So we'll start off by our honorable mentions of Guns of Season 3 of Stranger Things. Unfortunately, I do not have them to show you. Believe me, I wish I did. So first off, Hopper. Throughout the seasons, we've seen him carrying his Smith & Wesson Model 66 .357 Magnum revolver, and that is a gorgeous gun. Really wish I had one to show you guys. And then in Season 3, I believe it's once he broke into the underground Russian base, we see him carrying around an AKM-SU. At least that's what it looks like. And I looked around online to see if anyone can positively identify it. And everyone's kind of saying it's probably an AKM-SU. And basically what that is a shortened AK-47. It's much like our M92, which I will show you here later on. Our main villain, Terminator-looking bad guy, he was carrying the M92 quite a bit. And so I'll kind of touch over the differences of that. Saving this one for last, because any of my fellow gun collectors out there, you're probably realizing right away, like I did when I was watching Season 3, I was like, cool, they have my M92 in it. And then I was like, well, why do they have my M92 in it? Anyways, save that for last. Then later on in Season 3, Episode 7 specifically, we see Nancy rocking the Remington 870 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. And then on the very last episode, when the good guys, the American government's coming in to save the day, a day late, a dollar short, you see a lot of those guys carrying the M16A2, which is a lot like the the modern civilian AR-15. It's just not kind of that M4 setup. It's got the longer barrel, the longer hand guards. It's got the fixed stock. It's kind of that Vietnam era looking. You know, if you've watched Forrest Gump, you know what I'm talking about. So we see those at the very end. So those are our honorable mentions. Like I said, obviously with my collection, all these guns are going to be the Ruski guns. So to begin things, we will start with the Tokarev. Now the Tokarev started to be made in 1930, and it was called the TT-30. They did make some modifications to it, and you can see this holster. This is very typical of your standard Russian or Comblock era holster. They all have this kind of flap setup in one way or another. They'll usually have a little pouch here for your magazine. Usually some cool stamps in there, and maybe some Cyrillic writing. 1974, excuse me. So that's the year this holster was made. So getting back to this, so they started making this in 1930. They made some improvements in 1933, kind of to make the production cheaper and streamline production. And then they call that the TT-33. One thing you'll find in collecting guns is a lot of times when the model number has a number in it, that's almost always the year it was made. Sometimes it will be like the year before, like the year that the contract was established, and then full production began the year later. Sometimes it was the same year. So you're going to see that a whole lot to all of our new collectors out there. Now, like I said, that is not always the case, but it almost always is. So this is our Tokarev here. It is a single action firearm, and of course I always tell you guys, all of these guns have been safety checked before I brought them out, just to show you guys. So the Tokarev is a single action only. And what that means is if I were to put the safeties off, now of course this safety, there's a whole other video on that. This was added for importation into the US. Your normal Tokarev, it would look like this. Nothing there. The real factory original safety mechanism was this hammer. See, it's all the way forward. If you just pull it back a little bit, it'll click. And that's actually your safety. Can't even pull the slide back. That locks everything up. So anyways, this is a single action only gun. What that means is the safety's off. You can see it's not in that half cock position. If I were to pull the trigger though, nothing happens. The hammer has to be back in order for you to be able to pull the trigger. So that's what single action means. There are some guns when the hammer's down like this, if you pull the trigger, the pulling of the trigger will pull the hammer back, and then once the trigger comes back further, it will release that hammer. And those are called single action, double action guns. And we'll get into that with the Makarov here in a little bit. So the Tokarev was used a whole bunch in World War II. When I first started collecting surplus guns, I cannot talk today, you guys. I am sorry. I tried to get a World War II specific collection going. Unfortunately, right when I got into surplus seemed to be when the prices were just going sky high. So it ended up becoming just a Cold War era collection. So the Soviet Union made this gun. A bunch of their satellite countries also produced this gun. This particular one here is made in Radom, Poland. So this is actually a Polish Tokarev. This one was made in 1952. And yes, the serial number is 666. So metal. So Russia made these, Romania made these, Pakistan made these, a bunch of countries made these. And for the most part, they are true copies to the Russian variation of the Tokarev. Some countries will make modifications. This one here is a Yugoslavian Tokarev. Now, Yugoslavia, while they were communists, they were never actually part of the Soviet Union. But they made little changes on this. You'll see things like the front sight of the Yugoslavian one, which is right here, is actually adjustable. Also has some serrations on the top of the slide there. Boy, I need to walk this down with an oily cloth. It's got some serrations there to help cut down on the glare. The ejection port, this little opening here, is bigger. I think the idea is, to help reduce the chance of having any jams or anything like that. Even the little buttons here, they changed on the Yugoslavian one. So some countries would do things like, kind of modify the design. Other countries would just make their own gun, like Czechoslovakia. They never used the Tokarev. They use the VZ52, which is a very cool gun. Really wish I had one of those to show you. But it fired the same caliber as this, which is the 7.62 by 25. That's this guy here. Now, this is a 9mm. This is probably the most popular bullet, especially most popular caliber, especially in the U.S. This will be referred to simply as the 9mm, or 9 Parabellum, or 9mm Luger, or 9x19. If we're going to get real technical, I believe the specific proper terminology would probably be 9mm Parabellum. But anyways, this is, your standard handgun caliber. As you can see, this is a straight case. The Tokarev round here is actually necked down, which is kind of interesting. This is a 30 caliber bullet. So the bullet itself isn't very big, but it's a very fast traveling round, which is kind of interesting and unique. But it's necked down, kind of like what you'd expect on a rifle cartridge. So it's kind of a neat, fun caliber. It's pretty powerful caliber, especially for the size of the bullet, because it's not that big of a bullet. And this is actually some authentic surplus Romanian ammo. It was made in 82 at factory, I would imagine 22, or maybe that's batch 22. But anyways, so that's the caliber it fires. The magazine, which is this guy here, it holds 8 rounds. Most of these Comblock guns will have lanyard loops. This one is actually missing. I'll show you on the Makarov what it looks like. But it's just basically a metal loop. And they would attach surprise, a lanyard to that. And they'd either attach it to a rig that went around their chest, or something that was attached to their belt. The idea was if you dropped this in battle, you didn't lose it. It was like dragging behind you. It's probably getting beat up and dirt jammed down the barrel, but you still got it. They were just really paranoid about that for some reason. You'll find almost all of the Russian handguns with lanyard loops. A lot of the countries back in the day used that, but Russia, I think, was one of the last ones to stop using that. So anyways, the Romanian ones are by far the most common Tokarevs that you're going to see on the surplus market. And they're pretty much true Russian Tokarev copies. They're good quality. And you'll see those for about the $300 range. This one, like I said, is a Polish one. I purchased this back in 2015 for $260. And I purchased this from ClassicFirearms.com. And once again, at the end of the video, if I remember, I'll kind of go over real quick the basics of ordering a gun online compared to going into a store. Because like I said, I'm trying to make this video for new gun collectors. So you might be a little wary of that. You may have never purchased a gun, especially online. If you're comfortable buying guns online, you're going to be a lot better off with your collection. Of course, you don't actually get to see them. For the most part, when you're buying a gun online, you're buying a gun out of that batch. You don't see the specific one you're getting. Compared to if you go into a local gun store, you can, pick the best one of the lot. But that's the deal, if they have them in stock. Whereas online, you have a much better, product selection there. So like I said, today you can get these for $300 easily. At least the Romanian ones. Those were kind of gone from the market. That's another thing you'll find with surplus is sometimes they'll be available everywhere, and the very next year no one has them for 2 years, and then they're all over the market again. That's just kind of how it works sometimes. So the Romanian ones are available right now. Like I said, those are around $300, and honestly, that's probably the one that they used in the show. The Russian ones, or the Soviet era ones, those are pretty expensive. Those demand a premium. Well, not pretty expensive. They're the most expensive of the Tokarevs, let's say, or at least in the U.S. I know Canada, I think, gets a pretty good selection of those. They have different importation laws, so sometimes they get stuff imported in Canada that we can't get down here. It's just kind of crazy, but that's how it works. So this is by far the most widely used gun in the TV series. The scenes when they're walking around with the suppressors, they're using Tokarevs. Now, of course, I hope you do know that obviously the suppressors, when they're using those, they're not that quiet. If that guy fired that off in that noisy carnival, people would have turned around and been like, what the hell was that? it's going to sound like a nail gun, you know. So just so you guys know that the use of suppressors in any television show or Hollywood movie is always a Hollywood up. You know, they call them silencers. No, they're far from silent. They're noisy, but they're less noisy. And of course, some of them, especially depending on the caliber, they can get pretty darn quiet. But anyway, so just so you know about that. All right, I think I touched on everything for the Tokarev there. Put that off to the side. Now the next one I'm going to touch on. All of the websites I've been looking around trying to, you know, get information, make sure I didn't miss a gun. They all missed this. And I understand why. There is one scene that I can definitively tell you that you do see a Makarov. And that is in episode 5, when Steve finally kicks some ass in that central control room. You will see a Russian soldier there. And now this one, of course, is a Bulgarian holster. It's a Bulgarian Makarov I have. It's a very true copy to the Russian Makarov. I would imagine there's probably some difference in holsters. Even throughout the years of production in Russia, I'm sure there's a difference in holsters. But when you see him pull out the gun, and this one's kind of a little unique tab. I don't know if the Russian ones have this, but the Romanian ones, or excuse me, Bulgarian ones do. But you pull up on that, and kind of pulls your gun out. Ain't that handy dandy? And yeah, no real interesting marks here. Another thing about the Soviet Union, a lot of the countries, well, I guess all of them, were given like numbers, like in Hunger Games or something. So this was District 10. That is Bulgaria. 11. There's a really crappy stamping on this one, unfortunately. 11 is Poland. This too has a little spot for your magazine, and it's got a spot for your cleaning rod. The Tokarev one did too. I just didn't have a cleaning rod for that. But there's your holster. So the reason I say there definitely was, let me wipe that off. It's got a little bit of leather shaving. That's a fairly new holster I got, and it seems well like a unused holster because it's pretty snug. So Steve knocks this gun out of the guy's hands, and as you can see, this has a very distinctive, it looks like wood, but it's, I don't know if this is actually bakelite or just some kind of weird polymer that the Russians used, but it's not wood. You can see, you can definitely tell that gun that goes on the ground, it had that brownish colored grips. Now then, I'm sure some people go, oh, but the Tokarevs originally had wood grips too. And yes, they did originally have wood grips. But that gun in that scene, it looks, I mean, I'm telling you, it's a Makarov. Just go back to it. Like I said, it's episode 5 when Steve takes down the Ruski in the control room. He knocks this gun out of his hands. And I promise you, it is a Makarov. Now, what the Makarov is, it replaced the Tokarev. It started production in 1951 or 1955 or 1952. I've seen a couple of differences there. This fires the 9x18 Makarov round. Now, this is some surplus Chinese ammo here. And this is our 9x18 Makarov round. I'll put it next to our 9 Parabellum. And you can see it's a little bit shorter and fatter. This is very comparable to the American 380 round. This is our 380 round right here. And the Makarov round, I mean, pretty much in power, it's just, from what I understand, and I mean, I don't reload ammo myself, so I might be speaking out of my butt. But from what I understand, the Makarov round is ever so slightly hotter or more powerful than the 380 round, but it's not a very big difference at all. This too, like the Tokarev, has a 8-round magazine, nice and see-through. Now, the interesting thing about this, you'll notice on the Tokarev, the magazine release is up here. And this is where we would see a magazine release on pretty much any handgun sold in the U.S. today. This replaced the Tokarev, and they went with this little heel mag release. And you see it's not nearly as handy as that other one. And I've read some places that the Russians were really concerned, and not just the Russians, a lot of European countries stuck with this heel type release for a long time. They were just really concerned that while in the holster that button would be pressed on accident and they would lose the mag. So I think that's why the Russians stuck with this heel release mag for so long. So here we got a lanyard loop. Like I was telling you earlier, you attach a lanyard to that and attach the other end to yourself in one way or another. It's got slide serrations through the top here. You will see these with black grips as well. Some of the different countries had different grips. Some of them will have like a little ledge right here for you to rest your thumb on. Those are importation grips because we've got these really weird importation laws. A lot of these guns have to be imported with a thumb rest. Don't ask me why. This one does have more of what we'd expect to see, kind of mechanical safety here on the slide of the gun. Now this one, like I said, is a double action, single action. And once again, I told everyone everything has been safety checked. So what that means with this gun, see here, the hammer is down. It's not half cock. Okay, yeah, that's down all the way. So the hammer is down. Now as I pull the trigger back, that will pull the hammer back, and then it gets to the breaking point, and it drops the hammer. So that's what you call double action. Now the gun would fire. Now when the gun fires, the slide will travel back, and it's cocking that hammer back, then the slide will go forward. So it all happens very quick, obviously. And you can see now the hammer is now all the way back. And when I release on the trigger, there'll be a click. This one's not very loud, but I could feel it there. And so now the gun is ready to be fired again, but the hammer is back. Now, what is the advantage of that? The advantage is, don't know if you could tell me, but tell how much I was struggling with that double action when I was pulling it. This one's got, double action is always a heavier trigger pull. So this trigger is going to be a lot stiffer when you're having to pull that hammer back as well. Compared to when the hammer's already back, it's not as long of a travel that you have to move the trigger. Plus, it's much lighter, much lighter. This gun also has what's called a decocker. So say, there's some bad guys charging you, bang, 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 you shoot them, they're all dead. Now you need to put your gun on safe, but your hammer's back. Now one way, basically in the Tokarev, how you do this, is you put your thumb on the hammer and then pull down on the trigger and just slowly let that hammer go down with your thumb. But of course, if you slip, or it's wet, you could have an accidental discharge. That's no good. So they put a decocker on here, and what that does is the hammer's back. If I go to put it in safe, that drops the hammer. It will not fire the gun when it's dropping that hammer. So that's what that is there. Like I said, this one is from Bulgaria. See, there's circle 10 there. Now, Bulgaria made these for a really long time. This one's kind of cool. This one was made in 1998, and you can tell that from the serial number. And most of these guns, you can go online, and you will find sources to determine what year yours was made. And I can't remember, is either the AE or the 38, I believe, but that tells you the year. This one was made in 1998. Now, remember, I said they started making these in the early 50s. Bulgaria was still pumping them out in 98, and that was for a military contract. I believe they made them until like 2001 or 2002, somewhere in there, for civilian sales. So this gun was made for a very long time. It's a very dependable gun. It's very robust. It very much, could say it's the AK of the pistols. This particular one, I paid $230 for back in 2016. From Sportsman Guy, that company I told you earlier about all the different surplus. They do sell guns now, and every once in a while they sell surplus. I think this is the only gun I've ever purchased from them, and that $230 was a pretty good price, even in 2016 for this guy. You can still find these around $300, give or take. I think right now, of course, I haven't really, not looking for Makarov, but I haven't seen a lot of these out there, so I think we're kind of going through a dry spell of Makarovs. And once we get them in, I can almost promise you it's going to be more Bulgarian ones. Now, like I said, obviously Russia made them, Bulgaria made them, East Germany made them. I'm not sure if any other countries made them. Now, once again, countries that didn't make the Makarov themselves would either buy it from Russia or, like what some countries did, make their own kind of variation or take on it. This one here is a Polish, same country as the Tokarev here, P64. You can see that little circle 11 there. Now it shoots the 9x18 Makarov round, but as you can see, it's a much smaller, slimmer gun than the Makarov. Now this only holds, I believe, 6 rounds, so there are some disadvantages to it. And let me tell you, out the day of the range, this little thin grip, it digs into your hand. It's not the funnest gun to shoot. So you'd see countries doing variations like that. We also have Czechoslovakia, which Czechoslovakia just never liked using whatever the hell Russia had. Like, they didn't make the AK. They had their own rifle. They had their own Tokarev, take. And they had their own gun for the Makarov. They did not use the Makarov. They would have used a CZ-82. Quick note, this is a CZ-83. But just keep in mind, it's the exact same gun. This one's actually just chambered in 380 instead of 9x18 Makarov. And has this beautiful satin finish on it. Whereas your normal military CZ-82s would have had a black finish. But overall, you can see this is actually very similar in size to the Makarov, other than the grips. These have much better grips. And that's because these magazines, I haven't talked about these yet, are double stack. Which means you load a bullet down here, and as it comes down here, it actually spreads out into two, so you get more rounds in there. Now, both the Tokarev and the Makarov are what we call single stack magazines. And that's, I'm sure you figured it out by now. It's a single stack of rounds. Now, the advantage to having a single stack mag is your grip is going to be a lot thinner, making it more comfortable to shoot. Sometimes easier to conceal if it's going to be a gun that's going to need to be used for concealment, compared to this where it has many more rounds but a wider grip. So you'll see some stuff like that, but for the most part they use the Makarov. Quick note, episode 5, was that episode 5? Yeah, episode 5, where Steve beats up the guy with the Makarov. The belt he was wearing had this style belt buckle on there. So just a quick little note there. All right, now up to the last one. Save the best for last. Up next, we will have... Yeah, I knew that was coming. Oh man, my cameraman's not here. Okay. I get really frustrated with my little cheap Wish.com tripod setup. And luckily my wife is the cheap Wish.com tripod setup whisperer. So I have to have her come in here for my new two-handed shoots and set it up for me. And once she leaves the room, I'm on my own. Better hope I don't mess up. Okay. So this is the Zastava M92. We see this pretty early on in the TV series. I think earlier I said the Terminator-looking bad guy was seen carrying this. I think actually he had the AK SMU, the Russian one. Most of the guards we see, especially at the loading docks, are carrying these Zastava M92s. Now, the easiest way to tell that is these 3 vent holes up here. Yugoslavia is the only country that put 3 vent holes on their AK platform guns. Now, Russia and Yugoslavia had a rifle called the SKS, which was a full wood stock firearm, and all of those had 3 vent holes in them. But when they switched over to the AK, the Select Fire, and it just got the wood handguard, the Russian ones had 2 vent holes. Well, not just Russia, all of them had 2 vent holes, and then the Yugoslavian ones had 3. Now, Russia did make some short-barreled rifles that looked like this, but not chambered in 7.62 by 29. And a lot of those actually didn't have any vent holes up here. It was just like solid wood. So if you see 3 vent holes on an AK, boom, it's Yugoslavian or Serbian. Of course, Yugoslavia no longer exists. Zastava, whoa, where'd my voice go? Zastava is in modern-day Serbia, so you will see that. You can see right here, made in Serbia. So this is basically kind of a variation of an AK-47. Now, once again, like the Tokarev, since Yugoslavia wasn't actually part of the Soviet Union, that's a whole other video. There's a lot of bitterness there for many years. But Yugoslavia took the AK and they kind of made it a little bit different. They did little tweaks. I mean, looking at them, they're extremely similar. If you know how to, take apart one and clean it, you're going to know how to take apart the other and clean it. They are very, very close. But what we see in the series is those guards walking around with this guy. Now, the ones that they have an underfold stock, which is a stock that folds up, and it's kind of hollow in the middle. It's got two metal arms, so it clears this magazine, and the butt of it folds and stocks up underneath the handguard. Or excuse me, that's how this gun would have come originally. That is not how we saw it in the TV show. In the TV show, they were side folders, which a lot of people in the U.S., when they buy these guns, and once again to our novice gun shooters, if your barrel on a rifle is shorter than 10 inches, you need a special tax stamp. That's usually, I believe, $200. I think you can get them in most states. And then you can add a buttstock to it. And most people, when they do that, they'll add the side folding triangle buttstock because it looks the coolest, and it's probably a lot more comfortable than the underfold. But to be historically correct to the Yugoslavian, military M92s, it would have been an underfold. Now, obviously, this one here is a civilian version. It's semi-automatic only. The originals, your selector here would have been safe. Full auto would have been somewhere in the middle, and then semi would have been all the way down. This just has safe and semi-auto. So the buttstocks aren't correct on there. Not only is that not correct, but you remember me saying Yugoslavia was never part of the Soviet Union? Well, why the hell are these spec op Russian spies in the U.S. using their guns? That makes no sense. And then you can say, oh, well, they didn't want it traced back to Russia, but like you said, BrowncoatNerd, they're essentially the same, so the Russian soldiers would have been, trained to use them, so it wouldn't have been a big change for them. Okay, I'll buy that. But the problem is, no Zastava M92s were being imported into the U.S. in the 80s. And it's not a case of they just weren't coming in, then you could be like, oh, well, maybe they got them up through Mexico, and they still couldn't be traced back to Russia. No. The reason these weren't being imported into the U.S. in the 1980s is because they weren't made. These didn't first go into production until 1992. It's the M92. This is one of those cases where the model is the year it was produced. So when I was watching Stranger Things, I noticed that, and I did a double take. I'm like, sweet, that is an M92. I love my M92. I love Stranger Things. That's awesome. And then about 5 seconds went by, and I was like, wait, what? So just, once again, back to our novice, or first-time collectors or shooters or whatever you want to call it. If you're looking at this going, okay, pistols weren't too exciting, but I want one of these. Few things to know. First of all, you cannot get it with that 10-inch barrel, and the barrel actually stops right about there. This is a booster, and I can take that off so that it doesn't count as the barrel. These, you have to have that tax stamp to have it as a rifle. These basically come into the U.S. as a pistol. This is an arm brace that's been added on. That is not a buttstock. Okay? The idea is you slide your arm through there and you can hold it one-handed and fire and help you stabilize it. And there I go. See, I should have been wearing the arm brace. Would have been stabilized. Because these are heavy. It's not easy to shoot with one hand. Usually I'll just, if I were to shoot it without a stock or arm brace or whatever, I'm just going to hold the grip and hold this and kind of hold this section up near my cheek and shoot away. And the arm brace, man, I don't want to get anyone scared, but I don't know if these are going to continue to be around or legit. There's legislation's always changing on different things. Bump stocks were legal for a long time. Then they said, nope, can't have those, got to turn them in. So real quick on this too, when these first came out, these arm braces, you saw a lot of different pistoled, long-barreled pistols, whatever you want to call them, AR-15s, HKs, all kinds of stuff, fun stuff, using these arm braces. And pretty quickly the ATF came out with a letter saying, no, you cannot put that arm brace up against your shoulder or your cheek, or you couldn't have them touching both. You had to pick one or the other. It was something weird like that. And so when these first came out, I knew about that, and so I was just like, I'm not messing with any of those ever. That seems like a hassle. This one came on the market. I purchased it for $620 in 2017 from Classic Firearms, and it actually came with this arm brace, so I didn't have to spend extra money on that. That was kind of nice. And right before that, the ATF came out with another letter saying, okay, well, we can't really enforce that no one lets their cheek or their shoulder or both, whatever, touch. So we're not saying it's okay to shoulder it. We're going to shake our finger at you, but you're not breaking any laws by if that arm brace should touch your shoulder or your cheek or whatever. Now, I will say this thing looks very uncomfortable if you were to use it as a buttstock, or if it, I don't even want to say that, if it should touch your shoulder or your cheek. Not that I know, but I've heard that it's actually not that uncomfortable at all. So this specific gun, just know that weird business with the arm brace. It sounds really complicated. I promise you it's not nearly as complicated as I made it sound. And also, if anyone is looking into one of these, I have no clue when you're watching this video compared to when I released it. Let me fix this here. Let me try to fix this here. So just know, if you're watching this video, check your local state laws before you jump into the arm brace, because I don't know what the laws are going to be next month, unfortunately. But this is based off the AK-47, which typically would have had a longer barrel, 16-inch barrel. A lot of different countries made these shorter versions, and like Yugoslavia was probably the last country to do it. So I can't blame the guys too much on the set of Stranger Things. They probably went into a room and they're like, pick out the coolest looking AKs. You know, I mean, it's Stranger Things. It does not need to be, 100% historically accurate. And this, in my opinion, with that longer handguard, how it kind of comes out here, it's got that little groove for your fingers. This is the coolest looking, short barreled AK. I also just know that the Yugoslavian ones, the wood would have been a kind of unfinished blonde looking color. The ones we see in the movie, they kind of have a light brown stain, maybe try to make them look a little more Russian. This one has, your stereotypical Russian red stain. I wasn't going to do this originally. I got these handguards at a price I couldn't say no. And then I put them on here. And I mean, I know a lot of people are like, it's Yugoslavian. Why are you trying to make it look Russian? I mean, I wasn't trying to. They just fell in my lap. And I mean, come on. That's pretty. How can you not like that? And once again, this isn't a surplus gun. It's one of my few guns that's not surplus. So who cares if it's not historically accurate, right? Let me have some fun with some of my guns, goddamn it. So this gun fires the 7.62 by 39 caliber. That's this bullet here, and that's a pretty hefty sized bullet. Give you a comparison. This is the AR-15 or M4 or M16 bullet, the 5.56, also 223. I'm not going to get into the details. 223 and 5.56 are like almost the same. There's some minor differences. But just to give you an idea, there are a lot of people, that don't know a whole lot about guns talk about how the AR-15 has got this huge, deadly caliber, and they do not realize it's a 22. Yeah. So, I mean, and this is still a good round. It's very accurate, but this has got a lot more punch. And this is not saying that this is inaccurate, and I love my AKs, but this is more accurate. So that's the 7.62 by 39 bullet there. Of course, they have these 30-round magazines. You also see 40-round magazines as well as drum magazines. Some of the things that's kind of unique about the Yugoslavian ones, that's your safety there. On a normal AK, if the magazine is empty, you pull this charging handle back, it goes forward regardless if there's ammunition in the magazine or not. But with the Zastava ones, the magazine floor plate, follower, has got like a little notch that gets in the way of that carrier. So when you're shooting this gun and that carrier doesn't go all the way forward on your last round, you can feel that. It's not really a visual reference, But you can just kind of feel that and you're like, okay, I'm done. And then you can pull out your mag. And as you notice, that carrier goes forward. That is kind of one of the downsides. It'd be nicer if the carrier stayed back and then you put in your fresh mag and then you pull it back just a little bit and you're good to go. So a lot of people kind of knock that feature in these magazines, but they don't realize that it's not really for visual reference or even to make the magazine changes quicker themselves. It's so that you don't point the gun at a bad guy and pull the trigger and the gun only goes click, because there's no ammunition in it. The Yugoslavia ones also have this little notch here. That is designed to hold the bolt carrier back. And of course you can cut that notch into any AK. They make safeties with that notch in there. Our sights, a little bit different from what you'd find on the standard AK. Your standard AK, you'd have a sight leaf up here, whereas this guy is much further back, and you basically just have your two adjustments, 200 meters and 400 or something. Then you got the front sight. On the Yugoslavian ones, you have this little flip up kind of night sight. The idea is, now the military ones that would have had some phosphorus glow in the dark paint of some kind or another. And if you look back here, we do have 2 dots on the 200 meter. So 200, 2000. I'm sorry guys, I'm American and I was schooled in America, so I don't know crap for meters. Forgive me. I wish I did. That's not my choice. Another unique thing about these, and you'll see this type of device on a lot of these short-barreled style AKs, and this is a booster. It's not really designed to reduce the felt recoil. It actually increases the felt recoil a little bit, which is, how much you feel the gun going back at you. But the reason they started using these, because it has a shorter barrel, this gun operates off the gas pressure from the fired round to cycle the next round. And they discovered under fully automatic use, once they got dirty, the little gas port up here that allows the gas to hit, there's a piston in here, and the gas hits that piston, would get clogged, and they start to have issues. So on your civilian ones you're going to be shooting semi-automatic, you're never going to be like out in full battle. So you don't need these boosters for this gun to function. This gun actually doesn't even come with one. Oh yeah, that's part of the package too. Not only did it come with an arm brace, but it came with this booster. So I threw that on there. Once again, stupid, silly importation laws. There is a thread protector around these threads that was actually spot welded in. And that's how it has to be imported. It cannot be imported. Also, Russian threads, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, throw that out the window. I'll never get used to that. So I was also lazy and I didn't put in my retaining pin, so I will just pull this out before I lose it. So that's actually how the barrel looks. Did I not clean this since the last time I shot it? Ruh-roh. So this had a thread protector that was spot welded right there. And so I just took a Dremel, took that spot weld off and exposed those threads, and now I can put on whatever kind of device I want. And that is 100% legal to do once the gun's been imported, so you're not breaking any laws by doing that. One thing I did skim over, completely forgot, in another scene somewhere, episode, I didn't write I did, episode 8, I believe it was the underground base somewhere, we do see a Russian soldier walking around with a bayonet on him in this style. And you'll see these in this kind of orange. People will call this Bakelite. If they're ever talking about Russian Bakelite, they're talking about this orange. I believe it's fiberglass. It's not actual Bakelite. I think this is actual Bakelite, but I'm not even sure about that. There I go again. What I was gonna say, I think these might even be Bakelite. But anyways, this is not Bakelite. But if they're ever talking about Russian Bakelite, it's going to be this funky orange. They even make some gun magazines that are Bakelite. I've got a few of those. Should have pulled them out. It's just hideous, but I love it. And these are kind of cool looking. I mean, just look at that. That's a gnarly looking knife. And interestingly, these would go onto the AK upside down like that. You know, typically bayonets go underneath the barrel like that, but these would go kind of upside down. And if you're wondering what that hole is, oops, they are wired. So you can assemble this to your sheath, and that is a wire cutter. So that's kind of neat. And these bayonets you can get pretty cheap. This one is Bulgarian. This Bakelite style will always go for a little more than like the black composite ones do. But you know, some people prefer the black, some with the orange, whatever. Those are pretty readily available. And just so you know, none of these short-barreled AKs ever came with any bayonet legs. They were never intended to be used in that way. These would be issued to like helicopter pilots, troops that weren't really frontline soldiers, but still needed something, you know, a little more heavy duty than just a handgun if they did find themselves in a combat situation. Also, a lot of times you will see these used by different special forces. These are very handy for going in and out of buildings where, you know, you don't want something that's very long to get, you know, hit on the wall or anything like that. Of course, the downside is these are very loud because it has that shorter barrel. Also, you'll see a lot of like security agencies using these, like a lot of different, I believe the president of Serbia is like presidential guards. You'd always see them walking around with these guys. It's just a lot easier to get in and out of vehicles with them. And even though it's got a shorter barrel, they're not really that inaccurate. This guy's very accurate up to 25 yards. You know, that's not very far. And I'm sure you could shoot it more accurately further than that. I just usually shoot at an indoor range. Or excuse me, that wasn't 25 yards. It's 75 feet. Yeah. So at 75 feet, this is very accurate. I'm sure it could be accurate further, but yeah. Just so there's that. Also, Russian helmets. Now, I will say I did not see a single Russian helmet in the entire movie. This one is actually Czechoslovakian. But once again, you know, like the guns, many of the countries made exact copies. Not necessarily like Czechoslovakia. They made all their guns different. But the helmets were the same. And you can still find authentic Soviet Union helmets pretty cheap. Those are not expensive at all. And you can also find like the officer hats and stuff like that. All authentic, fairly cheap online. So if you are looking for a costume or a cosplay setup, those are all readily available. And just in case anyone is wondering, so I'm sure someone will eventually comment. Let me get this out of here without making a mess. The sticker, which I think I've marred up a little bit just now. Hawkins Power and Light. I got this years ago, like at the end of season 1 when it first ended, at my local Target, or Target, as you peasants may call it. But yeah, I saw it. I just thought it was really cool. I like stickers for things that I like that aren't like, you know, it doesn't say Stranger Things. It's like for something within the show. I don't know why, but I always kind of dig that and thought it was cool. Bought it, didn't know what to do with it, and then I was like, duh, ammo can. Wish I would have gotten 2 now, so I could have put one on either side. So I'm sure you can still find things like this online. Thought it was kind of cool to put that on an ammo can, taking me back to season 1 there. So yeah, I appreciate it. If you guys like this video, please... Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. I told you I was going to tell the newcomers how to buy a gun online. So basically, it's pretty easy. I hesitated, and I hate myself for hesitating because I could have gotten a Nagant revolver for $80. And I put it off, waited 2 weeks. That company never had them again, and they're like $300, $400 now. So basically what you're going to do to buy a gun online, if you go to a website, find a gun you like, say you want to buy a Tokarev, click on it. Almost all websites are going to have what they call an FFL finder. Now, if you're buying from a smaller company or a crappier website, they might not have that, and they might leave it up to you, which that sucks. I'm telling you right now, you're more than likely going to have an FFL finder at whatever site you're buying the gun from. And basically what that is, it's going to pull up a list of all of the local gun stores that can do background checks that they already have on record. Now, if you see if you have a favorite gun store and they're not listed on there, most places have no problem with having you have your gun store contact them, give them their information so they can make sure that they're a legit gun store and all that, and ship it to them. I usually just find one that's on the list that they have, as long as they're not too far out there. And I've actually found some pretty awesome local gun stores doing it that way too. I might just be lucky in the area I live in, but it seems like there's always any website I go to always has a ton of local gun sources on there, or FFL. So basically, you're going to find a FFL, you're going to select it. It will always say, before you place this order, contact your FFL. Let them know that you plan on ordering this before you go any further. Now, I have gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've had experience with 5 different FFLs. I think the first 3 I called them before I placed the order, and every time they're like, you don't need to do this. So I'm just letting you know. Now, some FFLs, that's all they deal with, and they're not open a regular set of hours. So if it's going to a big gun store, you're probably good. But if you're new, just give yourself some peace of mind. Yeah, sure, call, let them know. And maybe some places do prefer that. My personal experience, I have never had them be like, oh yeah, thanks. They're always like, yeah, don't worry about it. So just to let you know on that. So then you click order your gun. It comes to you. Well, excuse me, it doesn't come to you. It goes to your FFL. Now, usually your FFL will contact you once they get the gun. Now, more often than not, they're not jumping on these orders as soon as they come in. If they get a package delivered, they're going to open up that box in the next 1 to 2 days and then contact you. So if you're really eager to get it, watch your tracking information. Once it's delivered, now some gun shops might not like this. I am lucky, and the ones I've gone to have no issue with it. But I go up there, I'm like, hey, my gun was just delivered. Can I fill out my paperwork? Some places might be like, hey, we got a guy that does that. He just went home for the day. We'll let you know when we're ready. So just keep that in mind. Just call up your gun shop and ask them these questions. They're going to appreciate that you're asking questions instead of just, showing up like that. And it'll just give you peace of mind if this is the first time doing it. So you go, you fill out your paperwork. They run your paperwork. All states do vary a little bit on this. So depending on where you live, you're going to walk out with it right then and there, or you'll have to come back in a couple days or whatever, your local state laws require to pick that up. So it's really not complicated. It's pretty easy, especially if you already have like a local gun store. Most gun stores will do these transfers. There are some that don't really like dealing with it. And there are some businesses that this is almost essentially all they do. So if one place is kind of giving you an attitude about just having guns transferred into them rather than buying from the gun store, man, go find another one. Unless they're like really ridiculous cheap or they're your only option, go find another one. You will find a place where they don't mind doing it. And, you also pick up a little bit of gun knowledge along the way. So it's just a good little learning experience for you there. The other thing to keep in mind is for the most part, when you're buying a gun online, you say you want a Tokarev. You're getting a Tokarev out of their batch. You're not necessarily ordering the gun that's in the picture. It's going to be kind of the look of the draw. So just keep that in mind. Some people hate that. Some people absolutely want to have their hands on the gun before they fire it or before they buy it. For me, it's almost kind of part of the rush in collecting. It's like, am I going to get screwed or am I going to hit the jackpot? A lot of places offer things that they call hand select. It's usually something like they'll say they pull out 5, they pick the best of the 5 or pick the best of those 10, and that's the one that you get. And this is a big debate in the collector's world as to whether you're wasting your money on that or not. It probably just depends on what day of the week that your order goes through. I've used hand select and gotten guns that were in immaculate shape. I've used hand select and gotten guns that flat out pissed me off because of how crappy of shape they were in. But not often. That usually doesn't happen. I'm almost always happy with my purchase. If anything, I might be like, I just wasted $20 on that hand select, but I'm still happy with my purchase other than that. And I've also purchased guns that I did not pay hand select on, and I've gotten stuff that looked brand new. So, I mean, it really can go either way. One tip I will tell you, like Classic Firearms, they do unboxing videos. When they get guns in, they'll open up the crates and film it, and so you can kind of see it. Sometimes they'll get guns in that are just completely caked in grease. I mean, there's literally, it looks like earwax smothered all over the gun. Now, if you see something like that, don't let that scare you away. It sucks cleaning that stuff off, but what that does is preserving the gun. You're guaranteed that much more that you're not going to have any rust, because these guns sit around in warehouses for years. So when they're covered in grease, it looks gross. It might look like they're bad guns, but for the most part, that's a good thing, and it does suck cleaning it off. There's no getting around that. But if you see a gun that's completely caked in grease, like all the guns that they're pulling out of the crate are caked in grease, don't pay for the hand select. They're not going to clean that gun off before they ship it out to you. They have no clue what the gun looks like underneath the grease. So that is one thing I will say. If you want to take the gamble on hand select, on certain guns, sometimes it's probably worth it. But if you see a gun and their whole batch is completely caked in grease, man, I do not waste your money on that hand select, because they're going to have to clean that gun up before they can tell what it looks like underneath all of that. So that's just quickly my little 2 cents there. And you will have to pay that FFL a fee. When I first started collecting surplus guns like this, I think the cheapest I saw it was $10. I mean, that was, man, how many years have I been doing this? 6 to 8 years ago. Now that what I pay is not the cheapest, but I like these guys. They're easy to get along with. They don't mind doing my transfers. I pay $30, which is probably a little high, but every 5th one's free. So, I make up for it that way. So yeah, if you guys like this, I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. And the week is long. The silver cat feeds when the blue meets yellow in the west. Thanks for watching. Stay shiny and stay frosty.